A source in Russia's defense ministry has reportedly confirmed they went over the border by mistake.
Да никто не верит, все понимают. Это как-то дураки все знают, а умные все понимают.
Я гражданин Российской Федерации, Хохлов Петр Сергеевич, родился 1995 года, 8 февраля.
Как хотел найти, так и хочу.
Не за Россию. То, что делает сейчас Путин.
Images of Russian convoys heading towards Ukraine sparked fear that Russian soldiers were being sent to fight alongside separatist rebels. But with Russian and Western media telling starkly contrasting stories, the facts were anything but clear.
We have seen columns of Russian equipment entering into Ukraine.
Они врут. Никаких вооруженных сил, никаких инструкторов российских даже на юго-востоке Украины нет. Не было и нет.
Western media was very quick to pick up the story. The only evidence for this was a number of photos showing armored vehicles on roads in unidentifiable locations.
Those returning injured have been hailed in Russian media as volunteers, while reports suggest those missing in action are likely to have been buried in secret.
We're heading to the city of Pskov, which is about 4.5 hours away from St. Petersburg, and it's a very important place for us to visit because in many ways the story of Russian soldiers in Ukraine really begins here. There emerged reports of soldiers being buried in secret in various cemeteries within Pskov. Now, other journalists went in to sort of follow up on this, and we started seeing attacks against journalists.
Nearly a dozen reporters investigating the mysterious deaths have been targeted in a series of attacks. This one was captured on film by journalists from TV Rain, Russia's only independent television channel. As they were pulling up to the cemetery in Pskov, they were confronted by two men who demanded they leave the city immediately. They blocked the car and slashed the tires. They also tried to smash through the window. We wanted to find out what those men were hiding.
We're on our way to the graveyard here, and we weren't able to use a taxi. One of our contacts here warned us against that and got us in touch with a safe driver because apparently there's been an unofficial order to all of the taxi drivers here not to take people to these cemeteries. We just stopped at a store to pick up some flowers to bring to the cemetery and noticed that we actually have a tail.
Whether it was just our paranoia or the detour we took around the city, we seemed to lose our tail and soon arrived at the small cemetery of Vybuty. Local press reports claimed an entire company of Pskov-based paratroopers was nearly wiped out in a single battle in Ukraine. Some of those men were reportedly buried here in secret.
So right now we're approaching where we think at least two of these graves are. Osipov Alexander Sergeyevich, born in 1993, died August 20th, 2014. Around that time, we know that there was very heavy fighting in Ukraine. And whose grave is this? Is this Kachatkin? Kachatkin, born September 30th, 1984. He died August 19th, 2014. Originally, when he was buried, there was no monument, nothing. It seems that there was enough of a fuss sort of made about these guys that they put up these public monuments. This raises a lot of uncomfortable questions for the Kremlin. Russia officially isn't fighting in Ukraine. In this case, why are young men from this unit coming back in body bags and being buried in secret funerals across the country?
The families of the soldiers whose graves we found refused to be interviewed, but there was one man in Pskov who wasn't afraid to talk.
We're on our way to meet with Lev Schlossberg. He's an opposition politician and the publisher of a local newspaper, which was the very first publication in Russia to reveal that Russian paratroopers were fighting and dying in Ukraine. Now, when this information became public, Schlossberg himself was brutally beaten within an inch of his life.
the soldiers from Pskov died for what?
За Путина. Не за Россию. То, что делает сейчас Путин, это полностью противоречит интересам российского народа. Очень много жизней и в армии, и, судя по всему, число жертв долго не будет посчитано. Особенность таких войн – информация о потерях скрывается вообще. Это та самая газета, где были... Это вот первая газета. Вот.
And when this article came out about these the Russian soldiers being killed, this was a huge sensation here in Pskov. You were beaten within an inch of your life. Do you think that this was connected to the story of the Russian soldiers in Ukraine?
То есть для меня очевидно, что решение принималось в Москве, что оно принималось высокопоставленными военными, и решение это политическое. Исполняли его какие-то псковские гопники, скорее всего, либо действующие военнослужащие, либо бывшие военнослужащие. Вот я не хочу раскрывать детали избиения, это для меня, ну, как скажем так, это касается здоровья и касается следствия, поэтому я ничего не говорю в деталях, но я могу вам подтвердить, что они били очень профессионально. Это не хулиганы на улице, они знали, куда бить и как бить.
If so many Russian soldiers are involved in Ukraine, though, why do you think there hasn't been sort of more evidence emerging about this?
Потому что нет свободы слова и свободы массовой информации. Некому об этом рассказывать. Нет этих институтов. Кроме того, те люди, которые об этом могли бы рассказать, очень боятся. Я думаю, что сами военнослужащие просто дают подписку о неразглашении. Они же все смотрят телевизор. Я думаю, что многие люди из них искренне считали тоже, что в Украине фашистская власть. Поэтому у многих из этих семей может не быть мотивации говорить на эту тему.
The problem is that in a city like Pskov, this is a military town where the families depend on the military for their survival, even those who lost their loved ones. I mean, if they start speaking out about this, they have quite a bit to lose. So our plan now is to basically start a search through little villages in Russia that haven't been sort of permeated by the military to see if people will be willing to share their stories about what in fact actually happened with their men in Ukraine.
Вы волнуетесь?
Конечно, волнуюсь себя. Как хотел найти, так хочу.
Глаза у нее расширились, и она только сказала, как? Я спросила, что, дочь? Она говорит, наш Сережа погиб. Никуда не пускать.